So, I want to start off by saying welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're a fanatic of everything entertainment, this is the channel for you. But in today's video, I got the one, the only Cody Leach on here, so I just want to thank you for being a part of this. It really does mean a lot, man. I've been watching you for 7 years. I already told you this when I met you in person, so it really does mean a lot because you're one of the few people I look up to. But really,
Thank you.
yeah. Because well, I'm gonna nerd out really quickly, and then we'll get into the questions. I remember back in the day, it was like Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, all those big YouTubers. But I remember when I saw your review for Cult of Chucky, you had like a very small subscriber count, and I was like, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And so you motivated me to talk about movies on my channel. So it really does mean a lot for you to be on here.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then when you had that get together, that was just I'll be honest, I had more fun doing that than on my vacation. Yeah, I went with
It was a good
family.
night. It was a wild one.
Yeah, especially driving 4 hours out there and 5 hours back. But
Yeah, I know. I
I
think we got out of there at midnight. I was like, oh god, that's
yeah,
what it took.
yeah, I think I got home at like 5:30. It was worth it, man. So it means a lot. But I know you've brought this up on other channels, but is it safe to say that you're the only person whose life has been changed due to Sausage Party?
Probably.
Yeah,
Probably the
probably.
only person on planet Earth. Yeah. So yeah, that was a yeah, that goes to a point that I always tell people that when they want to start their YouTube channel, don't wait for the perfect moment, just start. And that
Yeah,
was my moment. There's no reason why I should have started with Sausage Party. It has nothing to do with who I am, my taste,
yeah.
what my channel became. It was just like, okay, I guess I'll do it this weekend, and that's what was out. So yeah, that's actually a good little segue into that. Just if you want to do it, just start. There's no perfect
Yeah.
moment.
I noticed you always said that you tried other things, but just stick with just the main thing that you're more comfortable with. Stick with a niche, and that's sort of what I've done too. Because I started out doing a lot of other things as well. So I'm glad to stick with mostly movie reviews. Sometimes I'll do some other stuff, but movie reviews for you have done tremendous. And there's other videos on your channel that blew up too. So that has nothing to do really with movie reviews, but it's cool how that happens.
Yeah, you always get the random ones that succeed, and then you beat your head against the wall wondering why. You're like, how do I
Yeah,
recreate this for the ones that I want to succeed? And it's just luck of the draw. You know, my
yeah.
my most viewed movie review on my channel is Jeepers Creepers Reborn, which just I wish it was a better movie, but nonetheless, you never know which ones are going to succeed.
Yeah, that's funny too, because how I discovered you, like I said, Cult of Chucky and Jeepers Creepers 3, so that's funny how that goes about too. And then also, like for the longest time, it was Seed of Chucky for me, when that's one of my worst, or that's the series I started out with, and so it's like one of the worst videos on my channel. So I don't know how that one
Yeah,
blew up either. It's always the worst ones too, or just whenever you start out.
yeah.
I don't get it, but I think it's also safe to say that your favorite genre of film is horror, just like mine. So my question is, who and what got you into horror films?
It's pretty much a tie between horror and action. It really depends on
Action.
what day that you ask me. But yeah, because my top two favorite films of all time are both action films, but horror is the genre that I probably talk about the most. But horror, it really, I think for me, it was like this forbidden fruit effect because I was only like 4 years old and I was watching, the Disney stuff and kids stuff. My dad would give me to watch a couple more, mature movies here and there. But he was watching Child's Play 3, and I just kind of got enamored with what was going on. I was like, "What? You could put this in a movie? This doll's like killing people. What is this?" And I think it was even extrapolated by the fact that I was in a private Christian school for the first couple years
Oh
of school,
Jesus.
so kindergarten through second grade, and they were ultra strict on everything. And so it was even more of a forbidden fruit where it's like, don't tell anybody. Shh. And so something about that was cool to me. I was not one of those kids that was like, okay, yeah, and then they go and tell everybody. I was like, this is a cool little secret. It's like a little world that only I know. And I think that started it. And what kind of kept going, aside from the fact that I just love the movies and I just love those worlds, it felt that way all the way up until my 20s, really until I started my channel, where very rarely would I meet somebody that I could talk horror with. And if I did, it was usually in a negative way where they're like, horror sucks. And then they'd talk about something else. And I'm like, oh, okay, won't talk to them. And then until I really started making videos on YouTube, that I figure out like that the horror community out there is huge. We're just kind of like quiet, I guess, or it seemed like we were quiet in my little circle of the world. So I think that's what it was. It's even same with like rock and metal music. It's like this very tight group where we all pretty much accept each other, but we're like the rebels and the outcasts or something like that.
That's the same case with mine too, because it was just me and my mom for the longest time, and my sister watching those movies, and she's like, "Don't tell anyone I let you watch this." And then like middle school,
Hmm.
I found like very few friends that I could. I'm still friends with to this day because I'm about to be 26. So like whenever I was with my best friends Tyler and Sky, that's like all we talked about as well was horror movies because you couldn't do it anywhere else. So I totally get it on that front as well. Another thing I gotta ask you is what's your favorite thing about horror movies, or why do you think you're drawn to horror? Or you already answered that to begin with, so I guess you already answered that question as well.
Well, I can expand on it a little bit. So I think what about horror that I really love, besides just what I was talking about, is it's the one genre that kind of makes us face the things about life that we don't want to face. Whether it's mortality or the thing that makes noise in the dark or what's under the bed or anything like that. It's just something about it that it kind of makes real life seem like it's not so bad. You know what I mean?
True.
We all have bad things that happen or bad things that are surrounding us, whether it's, health scares or politics or whatever, financial issues. And you watch something like Texas Chainsaw and you're like, things aren't too bad. I think I'm just gonna iron out a few kinks in my personal life. I'm okay. And so I think there's something about that that's always fun. You go into dark theater and you just like experience the most fantastical version of the worst parts of life and have some fun with it, have some thrills, and then go back to the real world.
Very true. That's how I felt when I was watching Terrifier 3 too. Everything that was going on with them, I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm okay with what's going on with my life as well. So I totally get that.
Yeah.
Um, what are some things that you learned while making this your full time career as well?
Well, um, Well, there's a lot of different things that I learned. I mean, for one, I learned that, which is something I'm trying to kind of teach my kids, is that you really can do anything that you put your mind to nowadays. Like, it doesn't work out for all of us. There is a bit of luck involved with it, but I grew up where they pretty much said you're either going to college or you're going to the military or your life's over. Pick one. And it's not how it was when I was a kid. It's certainly not how it is when my kids are kids. And so it taught me that there's really infinite amount of ways to make your own career, make your own business, financially support yourself out there. And then as far as just like YouTube and things like that, there's a lot of things that I learned as far as how you approach things where, back when I was working full time, it was just, I'll get whatever videos out I have time to get out. And then when I went full time, I kind of wanted to just like quadruple down on everything, like a video a day. And we're just going to spend all this time doing everything. And then I kind of realized that it's not necessarily that case. It turns into a quantity versus quality situation where I kind of felt like I was overexposing myself. Like, as much as people might love me on my channel, I don't know if they love me enough to see me 7 times a week. And so I kind of intentionally pulled back and started focusing a little bit more on different ideas and trying to do some things differently. And that's been nothing but successful so far, and putting a little bit more creativity into it versus just kind of doing the same old things, but more. So, I mean, I could talk for a long time about things that I've learned since I went full time, but those are kind of the main two ones.
Gotcha. Since the Marvel Cinematic is like the biggest thing right now, what are some horror crossovers that you would like to see? Given we've had barely any, but is there some that you were hoping for or to see in the last 10, 15 years?
Horror crossovers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just in general, which I think they're kind of heading this direction because DC is doing this. I just like to see a few more risky standalones. Like Joker pretty much proved you don't have to be a part of a universe to make $1 billion
Mm-hmm.
against all odds. And so I think that mixed with a few other ideas that they've had where like the Batman is going to be its own little pocket universe, and the Penguin just finished, which has gotten nothing but rave reviews. And so I think that Marvel realized after Endgame that they perfected the shared universe thing up to a point. They've struggled a bit since, and I think that they would do themselves some favors to do some one-offs like Logan. That was kind of a
Yeah.
one-off where just going to do this dark rated R story. Blade, perfect example. they've been struggling for years to get Blade off of the ground. I think it's like 5 or 6 years ago they announced it. We still don't even have a script. And I think that's a movie that just makes no sense to try to weave into the same universe as Iron Man and Captain Marvel. Just do a standalone thing. And whether it's Mahershala Ali or what I would prefer, they bring back Wesley Snipes for like a fourth, legacy sequel or something like that. I think that would be what I would want to see, whether it's horror or rated R or not. I just want to see them do some more cool standalone stuff where we don't always feel like we have to do some homework and we can just go have fun with a little pocket story for a while.
Very true. Speaking of on that topic, is there like a superhero character that you would like to see turned into a horror movie? Because there's like a lot of things that you could do with that. Is there like a specific character that you would like to see turned into a horror movie?
I mean, he's kind of rubbing shoulders with it in every single story of his as it is, but I'd like to see like a really dark and rated R horror themed Batman movie. I mean, a lot of his villains kind of lean that way, where they're monstrous or they're murderers or whatever, but you always get kind of the PG-13 version of it, even if it is a little bit more mature. I think it would be cool to see a Batman movie where all the shackles are off, where,
Yeah.
Joker's straight up killing people. You got like Man Bat out there eating people or whatever, whatever gnarly stuff they want
Yeah.
to do. And just let Batman go. Again, just a standalone movie. We don't have to explain why he's a little bit more violent this time. We don't have to explain it in the next movie. Just go have fun for 2 hours in this little weird Elseworld story. I think that would be pretty sweet.
The reason why I brought that up is because there was that short film with Chandler Riggs from The Walking Dead where they did like a horror centric Spider-Man thing. To me, I'd like to see Hulk because there are so many options you could do with that, especially if you brought in some of the Cronenbergs. That would be crazy to see Hulk do the same thing. But is there a movie to you that like you were a big fan of as a kid and doesn't quite hit the same anymore? Because I'm coming to that age now to where movies I loved as a kid, they don't really hold up anymore. Is there like certain movies to you that are like that?
I can't think of one off the top of my head. That would be one I have to prepare for. I think I've lucked out where a lot of the movies I loved as a kid were already kind of more adult movies anyway, and so
Mhm.
I didn't really have to have that weird poor aging effect when you go back and watch them. There's some movies like 90s kids movies or like some old Disney Channel movies that are a little hokey when you go back now, but for some reason the nostalgia still covers all that up where I still kind of get comfort from them. I was actually editing a video right before we went live where I'm actually talking about 35 of my favorite movies from my childhood. So it's kind of funny you
Oh
brought
wow.
this up. And the one of them that I could say I used to love as a kid, but is a little rough to watch as an adult is any of the Three Ninjas movies. Those are a little bit poorly aged, but I
Hmm.
could still kind of watch them with my kids and have a good time with them. So yeah, I don't know. For some reason, movies from my childhood, even if they're kind of bad, they still kind of give me comfort. So I enjoy watching them still.
You brought up your kids and you're a parent. I'm not one right now, but is there any gateway horror movies that you've shown them within the last 5, 10 years that you're a fan of and they've become a fan of as well?
Terrifier 2. No.
Oh no.
So yeah, I mean, gateway horror movies, it really depends on the kid. Because I get
Hmm.
this question a lot, like, what's a good movie to start with, or when should I start? And it really depends on the kid. Because I was somebody that at 4 years old, I was watching Chucky and Freddy, and it like never affected me. I always knew it was a movie, never had nightmares. But then you have other kids where they might be 11, 12 years old and still can't handle that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So really, it just depends on knowing your kid. And so there's movies like, it was intense for the day, but like Scream is pretty
Hmm.
mild by today's standards. It's a pretty good one. That's the first horror movie that my youngest watched accidentally, and
Oh
it,
wow.
turned her into a little horror fan. So that's a good one. Movies like Poltergeist is a pretty good one where there's a couple of intense sequences, but it's more family movie. You have things like Killer Clowns from Outer Space if you just want something really silly that they can kind of have fun with. Little Monsters is one that's on this list that I'm editing right now, which is a kid's movie where he befriends this monster and the monster takes him under the bed to the monster world. And it's a straight up kids' family movie, but it's got this adult edge to it and this
Hmm.
horror edge to it. So that's a really good one that not a whole lot of people talk about. But really, it just depends on them. And the key to that, if you have a kid that's a little bit more timid, is just to make sure that they have fun with it. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
tricked my son into watching them. He was told by his grandmother and his mom that he couldn't handle horror films, and I was like, "Yeah, you can. We're going to put this to the test." And so when they were gone, I had him watch Fright Night, and anytime I knew like a more intense scene was coming up, I would just crack a joke so that he was laughing, and it would mask kind of the effect of the scene, and so he would just have fun the whole time. So that's a little trick you can use too.
That's funny you bring up Little Monsters because when I was 9 or 10, I watched that for the first time. Haven't seen it in about 15 years, but I bought the Blu-ray recently, but I still haven't watched it. And then another one that I grew up with was Gremlins, and no one can go wrong with Gremlins because that's a especially since Christmas is coming up. Yeah, I love Gremlins. But what are some of your most like rewatchable horror movies or just movies in general? Because I have a very select few, but I'm sure you do as well.
As far as horror movies, I think Lost Boys is probably the one that I've watched the most, where I just never get tired of that one. You have like Dream Warriors, that's a great one. It's really the more fun ones that I think just I never get sick of watching. Other ones I kind of have to be in the mood for. You know, when you talk about horror so much, you're not in the mood to watch it as much as you used to. So like usually
That's
on
true.
Halloween or like in October, everybody's like, "What's your spooky season list?" I'm like, "Nothing. I'm probably not going to watch a single horror movie this month unless it's in theaters and I have to cover it." But those are some really good ones. As far as movies in general, movies like Uncle Buck, I probably throw on once or twice a year. You get into the holidays, Christmas movies. I always get back into that vibe. So you'll have like The
Mm.
Ref, Die Hard. I watch every single year. That's my favorite movie of all time. You got things um, like some of the Disney Channel original movies. I like to throw on as background noise sometimes, like Johnny
Yeah.
Tsunami or Brink or something like that. Those are really comforting movies that I can just kind of casually watch and have fun with. You'll have some comedies here and there that are fun, like Happy Gilmore or something like that. Like I like to throw on comedies to kind of uh, divert my mood from horror back to something a little more fun sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's usually fun movies or movies that bring me comfort in some way. Those are the ones that I'll watch just continuously and never get tired of them.
Is there a certain movie that you loved but you vow to like never watch it again?
Vow to never watch it again. There's plenty of movies that I've watched once and I would never
Mm,
have the interest, but I wouldn't say that I love them. For me to love
Mm.
something, rewatchability factors high
That's
into the
true.
way that I rate movies. And so I can be somewhat objective as much as you can be with film, which is mostly subjective, where I'm like, we'll throw out a movie like Oppenheimer where I'm like, yeah, that's definitely like one of the better movies this year. It's great. It's immaculately made. I can appreciate the hell out of it. I don't ever want to watch it again. So I'm
Yeah.
never going to have that higher than, something like Abigail that comes out this year. Like,
Yeah.
what crazy person would measure something like Abigail against something like Oppenheimer that won all these Oscars? But I would rather watch a movie like Abigail over and over and over and over again. So movies that I've seen once is usually like the more artsy ones or the ones that are a little bit more of slow burn. Now there's some great slow burn ones, but usually those are ones where it's like a really good, interesting experience in theaters once, and then it's not necessarily one that I revisit a whole lot. I can't think of one off the top of my head for specificity, but usually movies like that, movies that are like more awards worthy that I can watch, I can enjoy, I can appreciate, that I don't necessarily want to throw on again. Like my favorite movie last year, which was a surprise for me, was The Iron Claw. Awesome movie, incredible performances, so gut wrenching. It really like made me feel a lot of emotions that not a lot of movies last year made me feel. I don't know how soon I'll rewatch that movie though, because it's a pretty rough watch.
yeah, I've heard great things about it. I saw your review and I was like, I don't know if I'm prepared to watch that as well, but I'm excited to see it whenever I do. I don't know when that'll be, but is there this you see a lot more movies than I do, so is there any like recent horror movie that you could see being turned into a franchise that hasn't already been announced yet?
I think there's a couple of movies that I saw this year that would be interesting to see them get followed up, but I don't know how much franchise potential they really have. So you'll have movies like Sting, which was like this alien spider that was a pretty fun time. I could see them doing a couple of those, but I don't know how successful it was. You have movies like Cuckoo, which I loved. That there's a lot of meat still on those bones to explore as far as I don't want to say too much about the movie, but the things that we get into with the creature and everything like that, that you intentionally leave a lot on the table. And so you can have just a standalone movie with unanswered questions, or they could go back and tell a little prequel with it. You got movies like uh, Never Let Go was interesting. I think it's purposely left ambiguous, but that's one where I could see them maybe doing something else with the kids that are maybe when they get a little bit older. And The Substance, I think, is a movie that makes all the statement that it needs to make with a one time movie. I can't see that getting a sequel, but the concept of The Substance, I think if they really wanted to, you could
Mhm.
probably do a second one and explore that with a different way, maybe with some male characters or something. So yeah, I don't know. We've had some really interesting ones this year that have potential, but I think a lot of them survive really well as standalones. So we'll see.
In a perfect world, what's a movie that you want everyone to see and enjoy? Like, if it's if it's just one pure movie that you want everyone to see, which one is it?
Oh man, I think the easy answer is Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm looking at my top five, top 10 movies, like that's one where if there's any of them that I would just have a really hard time somebody not enjoying them, like please
Yeah.
explain yourself.
Yeah.
That would be the one. Now I've never really met anybody that didn't like it. Some people don't love it on the level
Yeah.
that, I do, but that's one that kind of feels like I often say if there's any movie that's like a perfect movie that you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't change anything and there's nothing you can change to make it better, it's that one. And so that's one that I think if I showed it to the whole world, it'd be
Yeah.
like that. Raise your hand if you didn't like that. Yeah.
Hardly anyone at all. I
Yeah.
know you've probably been asked this a lot and probably in comments as well. Is there this one franchise that hasn't been rebooted yet that you would like to see rebooted or sequel made to after all these years?
Mm. Oh, it's kind of a complicated answer because I don't know if I really want this or not, but I feel like
Hmm.
Child's Play is at the point where there's just nowhere left to go. Now,
Yeah.
whether or not I want to see a reboot with a different person, when we got the remake from MGM, but I don't know, that was kind of a half measure. That was very different. So I don't know. That's a series where I definitely want to see more Chucky, but I don't know if I really want to see more in the direction that they've gone. You have things like I always thought that The Burning was interesting that we never got more of those movies for as
Hmm.
iconic as that was in the 80s. I think it was just the killer cropsy wasn't really all that interesting. You have this series has rebooted itself so many times, but I still feel like they haven't found like the perfect way to actually like manage to set up a 3 or 4 film arc that they can capitalize on, which is Texas Chainsaw. Like I
Yeah.
love the remake from 2003, and then we got the prequel. Like they kind of boxed themselves in by killing so many characters and taking his arm off, and so they can only go backwards. And so every time they try to reboot it, it feels like they kind of miss what people want from that one. And Nightmare on Elm Street, actually, that's one that's I think it's been long enough since the remake. It's time. A lot of people out there say no Robert Englund, no Nightmare on Elm Street, and I'm not one of those people. I
Yeah.
think that if they have a really good script and they get a cool underknown or unknown actor that has passion for it, they can really do something cool. And if it's awesome, people are not going to be saying no Robert Englund, no Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just they just don't like what we got in the last remake. But that's another one that I really don't know why we haven't gotten one. It
Yeah.
seems like it's weird that they're so radio silent in a time where all the slashers are kind of having this resurgence, and I'm afraid they're gonna figure out their shit and or they're gonna announce something when the slasher resurgence is starting to slow down.
Yeah. Which that one makes no sense as well. I know that Wes Craven passed away 8 or 9 years ago, somewhere in there, but there's no legal rights going on or anything like that, if I'm not mistaken, like with Friday the 13th. But it's funny you bring up Chucky as well, because I remember we was talking about that in person. Is as much as I love Don Mancini, someone else needs to take the reign on that one as well. I think I already brought this up, but what are some horror movies that you got your kids into? I know you brought up your son, your youngest as well. Is there any more that they're a big fan of, or they're like, I have to be there when the next one comes out?
Not necessarily. Like my youngest seems to be the
Mhm.
one that's the most like outspoken about how much she wants to watch certain movies, but at the same time she likes to kind of play around with saying like, "Oh, I'm too scared, I can't watch this,"
Yeah.
which I know she can. So like Abigail is one that I showed her and she was
Mhm.
like, "I don't Abigail's scary." And then we watched it and then she wanted to like watch it 17 more times. But as far as like new movies, if a new Megan movie comes out, which it does next year, I think she'll be clamoring for that one. My kids are kind of strange, and I think it's just a generational thing. Like I go to the movie theater so much,
Mhm.
they never really ask to go. Very rarely is there a movie out that they're like, I really want to see that. They live in that time where everything's on Netflix and Max and all those apps, and so they always have something to watch. Whereas, when I was growing up, I was like hungry to go to the theater because I was just
Oh
tired of
yeah.
whatever we had at home. And there's certain movies that'll come out like Beetlejuice or something where I'll take the whole family just because that seems like a fun little family movie to check out. But
Mhm.
very rarely do any of my kids like tap me on the shoulder like, "Hey, when that comes out, take me." My son doesn't really talk about horror too much. He knows a lot about it. He's seen a number of them over the years when I've watched them, but I can't think of any that he's like a huge fan of. And my daughter seems to be a little bit my middle daughter seems to be a little bit on that like cinephile journey right now where she's
Mhm.
in that teenage age and she's starting to watch all these movies that she sees get recommended online. Like I came downstairs and she's watching like Girl Interrupted, like these random movies where I'm like, why are you watching that? And she's,
Oh
oh,
Jesus.
just checking it out. Yeah, which is kind of cool. But yeah, my daughter loves my youngest one loves Megan and Abigail, and she really likes and like Tiffany from the
Mhm.
Chucky movies. She really latches into like the female killers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I find it funny too. You was on my friend Frank's channel and you was bringing up your middle daughter was watching Terrifier 2 or something. And you're like, well, how's
Yeah.
that? So I found that pretty funny. That's a movie I was talking to my wife about. I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to show my kids till I'm like they're 17 or 18 because like I told you, I was disturbed the first time I watched the first and second movie. Now that I know what to expect with three and now four, it doesn't really bother me as much, and I had a really fun time. But one of my
Hmm.
last question is there any advice you can give to newcomers? I know you've said it so many times before, and you told me this in person as well, but what's the main piece of advice you would give someone that wants to do this?
Just start. Just do
Yeah.
it for fun. Don't do it with the expectation of I'm going to start a career or I'm going to be famous or I'm going to be rich or any of that stuff because it's an extreme small percentage of people on YouTube that ever get to touch any of those dreams. But if you start it for fun, like I did, and then you actually take it serious and you start to learn and figure out how to make things a little better and how to engage with your audience, like if it really feels like this is what you're going to do, you'll build up to that over time. I think too many people start with like the long term goal framed
Hmm.
as a short term goal. So like it took me years. I mean, I worked a full time job doing this for 5, 6 years before I ever was able to take it full time, and even then it was a gamble. And I do very well for myself, but I'm still like I'm much smaller than a lot of bigger channels out there that do it full time. So it's really just it's a matter of doing it for fun, doing it for something that's like a hobby, and then maybe those things will come down the line.
One of my favorite things that you told me in person was do one thing for yourself, regardless of how small
Mhm.
or big it is. Do something for yourself that not benefits you, but like something just for yourself for the better.
Yeah, that's
So,
something that I tell people that's on along the lines of just like starting your own business or whatever. Like I told my sister this a lot because most people out there kind of share the same sentiment of like, my job's fine or I like my job, but this isn't something I want to do the rest of my life.
yeah.
And so what I tell people is, yeah, don't ever go to bed without doing one thing for yourself. Because most people, we all know those days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, where you clock in, you clock out, you're exhausted, your day is just spent. You go home, you just want to sit there and decompress, and you just don't have anything left in the tank to do anything. And the longer that goes on, the longer it'll be before you possibly have an option to do something else. So whether you send an email, whether like if you're doing a YouTube thing, you can write notes for a video, you can gather clips for a video, you can record a video, you can edit a video. Always try to do one thing big or small, before you lay your head on the pillow at night. That way, you're always taking at least somewhat of a step towards your goals, and not giving all of yourself to a time clock that's not yours.
True. Before I let you go, I just want to say thank you for that fan get together. You're a lot cooler than I thought you were going to be, because you're that no bullshit type guy, and I thought you were going to be a dick. Turned out you're one of the
Uh-huh.
coolest dudes I've met, so I appreciate that. Can't wait for the
No
next one.
problem.
But
Hmm.
where can we find you?
Well, if you search my name, you'll find me. That's how creative I was in 2016. That's the name of my channel. It's just me. So
Yeah,
search Cody Leach, or Cody Leach YT, all one word. It's kind of how I've branded most of my stuff, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever else. So yeah, just search my name. I should be the first like 1,300 results before you find something else.
yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate you for doing this. It really does mean a lot to me. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed it. But with that being said, I'll see you next time.